It felt inevitable and still landed like a gut punch. Caitlin Clark is finished for the season. And the league that rode her star power now has to face what happens when the engine sputters out. This wasn't one freak moment, one awkward landing. It was a slow, public, unspooling quad tightness in May. Groin strains nagging through June and July. A bone bruise, layered on top by August, till the announcement finally stripped away the wishful thinking. The Indiana fever confirmed what Stephanie White had been hinting at and what fans feared. Clark won't return, not even if Indiana sneaks into the playoffs. And for many, the blame doesn't fall on bad luck. It falls squarely on a season's worth of swallowed whistles, and a nightly green light for defenders to test how much punishment one player could absorb before something gave. Anyone who watched the first half of this year could see it. Possession after possession, Clark fought through contact before the ball even reached her hands. She was tugged off curls, chest bumped into screens, steered into help, and tagged on closeouts that rarely drew a whistle. When calls did come, they often arrived only after the tone had already been set, after physical play metastasized into habit. Critics pointed to data that seemed to crystallize the feeling, a disproportionate share of flagrant fouls involving Clark, moments that made the highlight shows for the wrong reasons, and a drumbeat of clips where the officials simply stared ahead. The league's breakout draw filling arenas from Dallas to New York, driving a ratings spike every broadcast partner bragged about, was treated, fans argued, like any other rookie. Except she wasn't. Not to the box office. Not to the TV trucks. Not to the people who built weekend plans around seeing. No. 22 pull up from a step beyond logic. The cost of that approach was written across her season timeline. A quad strain that might have benefited from a hard shutdown became background noise instead, something managed rather than solved while the schedule marched on. As defenses denied space and pestered her off the ball, the groin became the next flare, first irritating, then limiting, eventually a tear on the right side that closed the door. Somewhere in that rehab window, a bone bruise joined the stack. None of these were mysterious. Anyone around high-level sports knows how stress injuries stack when you don't reset. Tape it, test it, travel, repeat is a ritual that buys a week and costs a month. Coaches could see the burst missing. The medical staff understood the arithmetic. And yet Clark kept suiting up, making the day-to-day tag feel less like medicine and more like marketing. The frustration didn't stop. At the scorer's table, it reached the press conferences and the suites. Fans wanted a steward's voice, one ready to admit what wasn't working and promise something better. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert did speak, but for many, her tone felt sanitized and distant. A nod to growth and expansion without the sharp edge of accountability. There was no plain language acknowledgement that officiating consistency had frayed, that player protection had lagged behind league ambition, that the line between physical and reckless had been crossed too many times without consequence. To supporters who'd bought tickets months in advance, who'd rearranged family calendars for road doubleheaders, who'd watched Clark grimace through minutes she never should have logged, the messaging sounded like it came from a different arena entirely, and when the reality finally hit the bottom line, the consequences were immediate. All-star tickets in Indiana, hyped for months as Clark's home showcase fell off a cliff overnight. Secondary markets flooded, refund requests spiked. Promo graphics had promised a celebration of the league's brightest, and instead fans felt strung along by optimistic timetables that insiders suspected were always long shots. Meanwhile, the venues that had upsized for the Clark effect stared at open rows and cold seats. Networks that stacked primetime windows around her games watched ratings sag. Sponsors who'd timed activations to her availability found themselves tethered to matchups, suddenly missing their gravitational pull. One player cannot be a league's entire business plan. Everyone knows that, but 13 games exposed how much of the WNBA's momentum had been wired to her presence. None of that is to say Clark wanted it any other way. Her own statement carried the weight of the effort behind closed doors. Hours every day in the gym. Stubborn optimism athletes live on. It's the pride in watching teammates grow through its Kelsey Mitchell grinding. Aaliyah Boston's leadership thickening, Lexi Hull doing the dirty work while she tried to coax her body back to where it needed to be. But the body tells the truth. No public relations line can overrule Disappointed isn't a big enough word, she wrote, and everyone knew exactly what that meant. Lingering beneath the injury report is a harder question. Was revenue prioritized over recovery? The Fever needed her. The league needed her. The broadcasters needed her. And somewhere between necessity and prudence, the calculus tilted. The club's executives insisted long-term health was the priority, and perhaps within the training room. It truly was. But out in the open, the pattern looked different. Day-to-day stretched across weeks. Probable morphed into doubtful and back again, while every update kept the hope alive just long enough to sell another road date or keep another marquee TV slot glued in place. That's the kind of ambiguity that breeds resentment. Fans don't expect miracles. They expect clarity. Leadership always has a lane to repair trust. Starts with candor, flows into standards, and ends with consistency. If the league wants physical play, and plenty of diehards do it, must also want a whistle that protects cutters, punishes jersey grabs, and doesn't let off-ball wrestling become the rule. If the league wants growth, and it does, desperately it must also admit when the rush to capitalize outpaces the infrastructure required to support it. It means instructing officials with specificity, backing those directives with film review and consequences, and communicating to audiences that star players will be protected the same way stars are protected everywhere else. What's left for now is the season itself. The Fever aren't a one-woman show. Mitchell will push the pace and punch above her size. Boston will anchor, screen, and punish single coverage when it comes. Hall and the role players will do the thankless things that usually win close games. By inches, and there's still a playoff chase, ugly, resilient, winnable on the right night. The stakes off the court are larger. Boycott talk is real because disillusionment is real. The only antidote is action that fans can feel. Cleaner games, clearer communication, and a commissioner who meets the moment with the urgency it deserves. None of this rewrites how singular Clark's game is the Steph distance pull-ups. The quick trigger reads, the flash that doesn't need permission. That's still there, and 2026 will bring it back. But the league must decide what it wants that return to look like. If it wants the financial halo without the safeguards, it's already seen the cost. If it wants sustained growth, it needs to protect the players who create it. Did the WNBA drop the ball here? Or is this simply the brutal nature of a long season catching up with a star? Should officials be held publicly accountable when physicality crosses the line, or is that an overreaction to a few high-profile clips? And for the Fever, how should they balance the business of selling tickets with the responsibility to preserve a franchise cornerstone? Tell us where you land in the comments. If these deep dives are your lane, like the video, subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss a breakdown. We'll be here when the next chapter begins.